Alright, you maggots, listen up. You better be paying attention. My associate just over that way is going to show you how to make this ugly boat in 4 stages. I don't know what you're doing messing around with these stupid plastic toys, but if you want to do it right, you better listen up. Step 1, build the damn thing. Step 2, make the damn thing more badass. Step 3, put some paint on the damn thing. Step 4, beat the crap out of it. Now that we have that established, go and watch the damn video. And if I catch you not subscribing, it will be 50 laps through a jungle infested with man-eating slugs.
Well, after that inspiring introduction, let's get going. So my local Necromunda group have been planning a Sump Sea campaign for a while now, which is basically going to be ash wastes with boats instead of trucks. I knew we would need to cook something custom up, as there really aren't any boat models for Warhammer 40k or Necromunda. Then I stumbled across this US Swift boat model on eBay. At 1/48 scale, it looked like it could really work. It totally qualified for an impulse buy. I decided to grab it and see what I could do with it. I'm not a kit bashing expert, but I'm decent at weathering effects, so I really had to give this a go. It's a perfect opportunity to up my game on something that wouldn't require loads of customization. Okay, so we're about to transform this Vietnam era army boat into a rusted out and run down Necromunda junker. Let's slap it together, dirty it up, drown it in resin. Let's go. So the first thing I checked was the scale, and you can see here it's actually not too far off. Like height wise, these are pretty close. That grey model's from the kit, and Necromunda models are a lot chunkier, but they are definitely close.
Step 1, build the damn thing.
Alright, so we put it together. It's a plastic kit, so we just use plastic cement, and it didn't fit as neatly as some of the Warhammer models. I had to do a bit of fiddling around to get it to the right spot. But yeah, I put the basic shape together pretty quickly.
Step 2, make the damn thing more badass.
So I rented my bits box for Necromunda, and you can see here I was a bit more ambitious than what I actually ended up putting on the boat, but a bunch of pipes and doors and things. Ended up just sticking with a couple of guns, so a storm bolter on the front and a harpoon launcher on the back, so that it could really fit in with the other Necromunda minis. And then I had this gang lookout model from Forge World that I was going to use as my pilot. I wanted to add some real detail like barnacles to the piece, so I found these little styrofoam balls and I cut them in half with a scalpel, and I imprinted a shape on them with a Phillips head screwdriver. And then I slowly lost the will to live, gluing 100 of those things all along the hull. And you can see there, it actually looks pretty good. They definitely give a barnacle feel, maybe giant mutated barnacles, but they definitely look like barnacles, which was what I was trying to get done. Alright, now we get our texture paints out. So before painting, I like to lay down a first layer of texture. So I got some Agrellan Earth, which is like a crackle paint, and I've got some AK Rust paint there, which is sort of leaves a bumpy texture where you apply it. And I really just smear that on in random spots across the boat. And it ends up looking a little bit like a camouflage pattern once you're done, as you can see here. That's going to give us a nice layer of texture underneath. You also see that blue paint on the barnacles is just Mod Podge with blue paint, just to give them a bit of reinforcement and strength as we start to spray and damage this piece through weathering. Got some hobby chain and wrapped that around in a few bits and added some more wires just to give it a bit more of a haphazard and Necromunda look. And I found something that would qualify as a steering wheel just to chuck into the front of the boat.
Step 3, put some paint on the damn thing.
Alright, let's get painting. So we got our Vallejo brown spray and just sprayed it all over. I like to get a sort of reddish brown because this will be an undertone for some rust effects. I then got my chipping medium and I sprayed that all over the model. And I use the airbrush here to do that, just to get a nice even coat. It's important not to put this on too thick, but also not too thin, so that it actually does have the effect you want it to have when we start doing the chipping. Alright, now first layer of paint. So I got this sort of teal colour that I like to use for that grimdark look, and I just gave that a spray over. I also used a bit of dark grey just for the shadow side of it, so that I would have some variation between the base coat and the shadows. And just spray that on. I then got this beige colour, and again used a lighter colour just to give it a highlight. And to do that, I used some hobby paint because I really wanted this line paint pattern going down the side of the boat. It wasn't a perfect surface to put the tape on, but I kind of roughly got it where I needed it, and I could always tidy it up later. Alright, so we sprayed that, and I did the base of the hull that lighter colour, and the sides that bluey green sort of colour. And then I got the main carriage of the boat also in that beige colour. At this point I'm just spraying the whole thing in those base colours. I'm also working quite quickly here because I want that chipping medium. It does have a time limit of about, I think it's about an hour for it to be active. I haven't really tested it, but I've heard you need to move fast, so I was working pretty quickly just to get these base coats down. And then it's got a light sort of very cold blue for the flooring, the deck, I think is the correct terminology of the boat.
Step 4. Beat the crap out of it.
Alright, and let's get weathering. So I spray my paint job in water, and then I just go to town. This is so much fun. So you just grab skewer, brushes, whatever you want, and you start hammering away at that paint job you just did. It is really, really simple, really, really fun, and yeah, you just keep going until you're really happy with how it looks. And this is really easy. I mean, anyone can do this. You've just got to be able to work with the chipping medium. I even gave my cat a go. He did a great job. And then I scratched away at the hull there, again making it look like places where it might have scraped up against things, and gave much larger patches of rust there as well, and just dirtied up the deck. Painted my little pilot there, and I just fixed him into his eternal resting place in the cabin. I then got some of that rust texture, and I put that around the edges where I attached the cabin to the deck, and that's just to make it sort of blend in a little bit better. Doesn't look like it's been glued on as an afterthought. Then got some of that original blue-green type colour, and I just painted up some of the trim, really acting as a bit of a highlight, but also just neatening up things, and added some highlights under the chips on the side. Then got some Vallejo metal colour aluminium and steel and mixed them together, which is like a really nice version of sort of bolt gun metal, Games Workshop colour, sort of mid-tone metal colour. And I paint some of the metal bits there, the railings and a few other bits and pieces. Then got like a bronze colour, I think it was Warplock bronze in this case, and painted some bronze bits, and then added a bit of other colours, reds, yellows, to some of the details along the boat. And it's Necromunda, so I needed to have checker patterns. It must happen on every single thing that I make. And yeah, I used a ruler to draw that out and then painted that on. Then got some streaking grime, and I heavily watered this down. There are a few ways you can apply this. You could use an airbrush, I decided I wanted a really uneven, grimy look, so I actually poured it on. I probably don't recommend doing this, but it was fun, super simple to do, and it did give a really uneven application of that grime, which is kind of the look I was going for. I expected this surface to get wet and dirt to sort of move around as that water sloshes onto the deck, so I thought I'd simulate that by sloshing water onto the deck. And I just apply that pretty much all over the boat, really focusing on recesses or where that underlying texture paint was. I got a much thinner version of that and painted the hull because I didn't want the hull to be as grimy as the top, because that's obviously going through the water most of the time. Then got these makeup sponges and I sponged off a lot of that grime in areas that I thought a lot more foot passage might happen, or just to give it some variation in tone as sort of highlights. And I did wipe off probably, I'd say, the majority of it on the hull, and it really acted as a tint or a stain more than a wash. Got some of these dust effects, and I just applied that where I thought some dust might build up. So this is a great little tip if you like decals. You can go to nail art stores to buy nail decals, and they are typically sized perfectly for miniatures, and you can get so many designs, and they're so much cheaper than buying decals from hobby shops. Then got these barrels and some oil barrels from Green Stuff World that I was going to add on later, paint those off camera, and I put them onto the build a bit later on. Then went on to some rust effects. So I got the rust set from AK. I haven't used it that much, and I decided I'd give it a go here. So what I did is I found some of those textured areas that I had from when I was putting the rust effects on, and I painted that, used that as a bit of a guide and a template to paint some of the rust on. So I start with the darkest rust color, and I just sort of apply that in a patchy way to all of those textured areas. And then you get the slightly lighter color, and I just paint that inside that original dark rust color. And I get the very lightest color, and I just really touch that on. That's quite a bright orange, as you can see. We don't want too much of that. And because these are all enamels, they kind of self-blend, and if you're unhappy with how they blend at the end, you can just give them a little layer of mineral spirits, and it would blend everything together perfectly. Then painted my barnacles in a warm grey. It's kind of like a purpley pinky grey. Then I got some Nuln Oil and just brought some of the detail that I'd punched into them with the screwdriver back out. Then got some oil spill effects and put that down where the oil barrels were. And then I got some AK oil paints which were metallic, so steel sort of color and a gold color, and I used that just to brighten up some of my metal effects. Alright, we're on to the home stretch now with the most fun but also the most scary part, which is resin. So I got some deep pour resin. I hadn't tried this brand before, and I started mixing that up. I put a bit of brown and green transparent paint, just sort of murky, dirty Necromunda style water. And then I gave that a really, really good stir. I probably overstirred just through my paranoia of it not setting properly. And then I just poured that into the mold. The mold is just a plastic container I found online. It took me a while to find one that's the perfect size. And I put some mold release in that beforehand, which gave some pretty impressive results later on. And then put the boat in, and you can see I have a skewer there, and that skewer is used to hold the boat into a position at the front once I add some weights, so that it's sort of tilting upwards and looks like it's going to be speeding through the water once I add water effects. And that mold release worked an absolute treat. This was very satisfying, but this literally just slid straight out of the mold. And I got to say, I was pretty impressed with both the resin that I used and the results. I think it looks really good. Okay, so onto some water effects. So I got some gloss Mod Podge and some cotton wool. And what I do is I think about where the water is going to be breaking as the boat's speeding. We want to give a sense of forward momentum. So I apply some of the gloss Mod Podge towards the front of the boat there. And then I get some thin strands of cotton wool. I just place them along the hull where the boat's sort of rushing through the water. And I just dab that on with a bit of glue to hold it in place. Just do that all around the front. Again, repeating the process, just a bit of glue, cotton wool, and I actually built this up a few times off camera, so you might want to go and do it a couple of times until you get the thickness and the size of the waves and the foam that you want. So once that's just dried off for a couple of hours, just enough to get it to stick down there, we actually get some Mod Podge and paint it over the top of the cotton. And this adds a really nice water effect to foam, just because it still looks glossy and wet, but the foam adds that white frothy color there and gives you sort of dimension and texture. So it looks like there are some water crashing against the boat. And I do something similar at the back, just where I think the boat might be making some trails. And again, cotton wool, Mod Podge, and I kept playing with it and applying it off camera a few times. Next, to just give the water some life, I put Mod Podge all over the base, and then I got a little syringe, just like a medicine syringe, and I sprayed some air onto the water, just giving it like a rippled look, some disrupted water. And that's how we're looking after everything is done. So I hope you enjoyed that. We're on to some beauty shots now. Please, if you did enjoy the video, like and subscribe. It helps the channel heaps. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.